Will The Miz bring Relevance back to the WWE Championship? Shoot or work on the weekly wrestling rumors? And swerve me wrong that Vince needs the Attitude Era wrestlers to get ratings. My name is Michael Valenti, this is Ralph Valenti, and you're listening to the Squared Circle Psychobabble. Well, Ralph, it's been a pretty big week here in the world of professional wrestling, and I never thought we would get into politics. You know,
right, yeah.
You got Smackdown 1000 coming up, you got Survivor Series coming up, but there's this glorified house show / pay-per-view that's supposed to be happening in Saudi Arabia, and that is the Crown Jewel, and this might not happen.
Right. And, you know, like you said, I never thought we'd really get into politics, and we don't need to really dive too deep into the politics of this because it's a show about wrestling and not about politics. But to pretend that, you know, geographical politics don't play a part outside, don't affect sports and wrestling, well, obviously they do, and especially this story that's currently, you know, developing. They're still trying to get information. And yeah, it could affect Crown Jewel, and it could actually prevent the show from actually happening in Saudi Arabia.
And in case you are unfamiliar with the story that's happening, there was this Saudi journalist by the name of Jamal Khashoggi who has been in the news because he went to the Saudi consulate in Turkey, and disappeared. He has not been seen since he entered the building. And there are reports that he was actually dismembered by members of the Saudi government and has not been seen since. So now you have U.S. senators, including Connecticut's own Chris Murphy, where WWE headquarters are in Connecticut, saying that the Crown Jewel show should be canceled. They should not have this. And of course, WWE made a small statement Friday morning saying they are monitoring the situation. Well, 4 hours before we went into recording this podcast, we got a report from CNN saying that Khashoggi was actually wearing an Apple Watch and transmitted possible evidence of his death. So if this is true, they could find the Apple Watch or at least some GPS location on where he is. This could be really bad for all the communications in the United States and Saudi Arabia. I mean, we already have so many businesses cutting ties, including Virgin with Richard Branson. You have Ariana Huffington from the Huffington Post, and among many others, the World Bank. They're all cutting ties with Saudi Arabia. If WWE goes through with this, and it's been all over Twitter, we actually put a poll up on our Twitter page at SCPB Podcast where we said, what should WWE do? Go on with the show, wait for the details, or cancel it. And it was blown out of the water. I think like 71% said...
Yeah, overwhelming.
Overwhelming. 71% said to cancel the show. If you're WWE right now, do you cancel Crown Jewel?
I don't know. I think the right move is probably to cancel. And again, we don't need to dive too deep into the politics, but WWE's last show that they did in Saudi Arabia, we already know that there were people within the organization, meaning the WWE, that were critical of the fact that they were putting on such a big show in Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia is a country where there are a lot of, I guess you can call them rights violations, and in comparison to what we have here in the United States, they are afforded certain freedoms. Much of that can be based around sex. And again, we don't have to, and male or female, but we don't need to dive too deep into that, but Corey Graves actually put a tweet out, something to the effect of the fact that they weren't allowed to have female wrestlers, I believe, on the card. And you'll notice on Crown Jewel, the same thing. So female wrestlers cannot go there and perform in Saudi Arabia. So what's the right move for the WWE? It's tough because I know they have something like a 10-year contract in place, right? With the Saudis.
Right. And not only that, this is a $50 million contract. So they're putting a lot of money off the table here. And not only that, if they pull away from Crown Jewel, they could potentially be sued. I don't know what the terms are in the contract where, something like this causes a break in the contract and they could get away with it without any liability. But WWE is really in a rock and a hard place because all the money that they lose if they don't do it, but the PR backlash that they'll get if they go through with it. And there's already backlash, as you mentioned before, because of the fact that the women can't wrestle there. And they kind of padded that with Evolution in a way. But at the same time, with this news about Khashoggi, I mean, you got to find, at least WWE is being proactive in finding a backup plan. Yeah. I've heard a couple things. Meltzer earlier today or late last night said that they could potentially move DX and the Brothers of Destruction to Survivor Series. I've also heard that they might move the show to the United Kingdom. That really has to be talked about here that I don't think is really getting the recognition or the media attention. You have the President of the United States, Donald Trump, who is a member of the WWE Hall of Fame, has hosted multiple WrestleManias and has been in multiple WrestleManias with Vince McMahon. You have Linda McMahon, Vince's wife, who is the head of the Small Business Administration, part of Donald Trump's cabinet. And Kane, who is in this supposed main event at Crown Jewel, just was elected mayor of Knox County. Mm-hmm. So there's definitely some political influence in this decision. Yep. Think of the backlash that Trump can get, that Linda can get, that Mayor Kane can get if this goes through. And Vince really should be listening to those three people in the next week or so before definitely saying this is happening or not happening. Yeah. So let's move on to why we're here. We're talking about wrestling. And this coming Tuesday, we have SmackDown 1000. But before SmackDown 1000, we had SmackDown 999. And again, The Miz delivers on an amazing promo. So we had The Miz TV with AJ Styles, Daniel Bryan, and The Miz. And it started off with Daniel Bryan and AJ poking fun at The Miz for having his 2-minute match. And throughout the whole thing, The Miz is trying to just be professional, say very little. Then he finally has enough and just lashes out on both of them. He says, Daniel Bryan, listen, my shoulder was up. I should be the number one contender. And then he goes to AJ Styles. And we talked about this, and The Miz hit it on the head. The WWE Championship has never been more irrelevant and less prestigious. You want to know why it doesn't main event pay-per-views? Look in the mirror. We talked about this last week with AJ Styles. His feuds are lackluster. His matches aren't delivering. And because of that, he's not main eventing pay-per-views. If The Miz becomes the next WWE champion, can he bring relevance back to the title?
Well, first of all, I don't think that the title itself is necessarily irrelevant. I think AJ Styles right now, to me, is still the best in-ring wrestler on the on the main roster who performs on a consistent basis. I wouldn't consider Cena as somebody who performs on a consistent basis right now because he kind of comes and goes. Same could be said for guys like Triple H and whoever else, right? So I don't think that the belt is not prestigious. I do, and everyone knows this because if they've listened to the show, I have been critical of AJ Styles in his recent feuds and his recent matches not delivering, not being up to the caliber of match that you'd expect from AJ Styles. As far as The Miz is concerned, this is a guy who, going back, as I said, back to the WrestleMania where he was feuding with John Cena, where I really feel like he was starting to get his stride and build his confidence. This was a guy that was essentially kind of a castaway. There was a lot of people who truly did not like him backstage as far as, The Miz admits to that himself. And he did not have a lot of support from the fans. And I think he's really starting to come into his own and understanding his character and just being himself times 10, that's something that a lot of the greats talk about. Just be yourself and turn the volume way up on your personality. And him being able to cut the promo that he did, again, he was able to outperform the guys in the ring that are supposedly be better than him. You know, if you ask any wrestling fan, they're probably going to always tell you that, you know, Daniel Bryan or AJ Styles is better than The Miz. And in ring, I would agree, they probably are. But again, this is wrestling and it's about characters and personalities. And Miz is way ahead in those categories in comparison. So if he were to win the belt, I think that he'd have a couple of fun feuds. I just don't know if the WWE will actually commit to that.
I think they are on their way to actually committing this. And AJ Styles has been the WWE champion for almost a year now. If he ends up beating Daniel Bryan at whenever this match happens, whether it's Survivor Series, Crown Jewel, if Crown Jewel still goes through, I think The Miz is going to be the one that takes the belt off of AJ. Anytime The Miz has a belt, for some reason, the prestige just increases. You look at the Intercontinental Championship, that belt, when the belt is on his waist, he doesn't even need to defend it that much. Just him having that title, the prestige is raised.
Give the guy the mic and let him talk.
The interest is raised. His matches aren't going to be 5-star matches. I understand that. But with him, you're worried about whoever the face is just kicking the crap out of him. And that's what you want out of a heel. You want the heel to be hated so much that whoever's facing him, you just beat the crap out of him.
Right.
And that's what's missing in WWE when it comes to heels. I mean, if he wins this, you're going to have heat on that title and prestige and interest on that title to maybe there's a point where it finally main events a pay-per-view. And I've said this before. You talk about co-branded pay-per-view. SmackDown never main events a pay-per-view. You're talking about the last time it happened. It was WrestleMania 19. Mm-hmm. So if The Miz does this and you end up getting that Miz versus Daniel Bryan WrestleMania and we don't get Flair and Ronda and we don't get Rock and Roman, that's the main event of WrestleMania 35.
Yeah. Well, if it's tough because even if they go all in on The Miz, I still don't see that match main eventing a WrestleMania or a major pay-per-view. That being said, though, you could still produce compelling television and entertainment with The Miz having the belt because, like you pointed out, if you have a heel who either, you know, you get the hardcore fans who might get behind Miz depending, I don't know, depends who he feuds with probably, but you're going to get some people who are willing to root for The Miz, and then you're going to get a lot of the people that are going to boo him. And then it's easy. You know, the story's already there with Daniel Bryan, so you've got the heel and you got the face, and the same could be said for AJ Styles. The thing that's so special about The Miz, I think, so if you talk to people that work in comedy, they call it reading the room. And I think there's very few guys who know how to read the room and kind of understand, you know, okay, if I say this, it's going to get this type of reaction. He's so good at that where he knows if he says certain things and plays to the crowd, he's going to get a type of reaction that's either going to get a lot of heat or get him cheered. So, you know, he's really good at that. Elias is another one who's certainly good at that. But there's a lot of other guys who just, you know, whether it's Leo Rush or some of the other guys, they just kind of say things and it falls flat. The Miz, week after week, like I said, going back to his feud with Cena, has been so consistent in delivering on just another level. You know, I really hope they give him the opportunity because I think he deserves it because he's been so consistent over the past couple of years.
All right. Well, we're going to take a short little break. And when we come back, it's Shoot or Work on the weekly wrestling rumors. It's coming up next on the Squared Circle Psychobabble. Are you following the Squared Circle Psychobabble on social media? If not, you better get onto it. We're on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at SCPB Podcast. All right, it's time now for Shoot or Work, where we take the weekly wrestling rumors and say shoot if we think they're going to happen, or work if we think they are false. So we're going to start down in Orlando, Florida, and the NXT Performance Center, where some guy by the name of SoDoTW on Twitter tweeted out that Chelsea Green has reported to the NXT Performance Center and has signed with WWE and NXT. Now, if you're not familiar with who Chelsea Green is, she was Laurel Van Ness on Impact, the hot mess bride. She is Reclusa in Lucha Underground, who just had a match with Pentagon Dark. And she's also Zack Ryder's girlfriend. And she was also on All In the Fatal 4-Way match between her, Britt Baker, who is Adam Cole's girlfriend, Tessa Blanchard, who is Tully Blanchard's daughter, and Madison Rayne, who was in the Mae Young Classic. And she's also, do you remember in 2014, the Daniel Bryan affair that was supposedly happening with the trainer? Chelsea Green is the trainer. She's Megan, the personal trainer that cheated or that had the affair with Daniel Bryan, or supposedly. So there's definitely ties there with WWE, and she had a visit at the Performance Center in June. So, Ralph, shoot or work, WWE signed Chelsea Green to NXT.
I'm going to say shoot. If they've seen her at the Performance Center, especially given the fact that she's dating Zack Ryder, not that he's got too much influence. I mean, you know, we've seen this time and time again with WWE and NXT specifically. If there's a big talent or somebody who they think can, you know, bring some intrigue to their product, they're going to sign them. So, shoot.
I'm going to say, for now, this is a work, because I don't know who the heck this Twitter account is, So Do TW. You talked about this last week, how people just randomly put stuff on social media and people are accepting it as truth. I've seen articles by Sportskeeda, by Wrestling Inc., by Ringside News. Everybody's reporting this tweet saying that this happened. Yet I've not seen any pictures of her being at the Performance Center. I've not seen a statement by the WWE. I've not seen any tweets by Chelsea Green herself promoting that she's there. In fact, she's promoting herself with Lucha Underground still, because she's still having matches with Pentagon Dark. So until I actually see something, I can't believe that this is true. So it's not, to me right now, it's a work.
We'll see.
I think eventually this is a shoot. I think eventually they will sign Chelsea Green. And if she signs with NXT and eventually goes to WWE, she needs to have the Laurel Van Ness gimmick. If you watch the videos on Impact Wrestling's YouTube channel, or if you're subscribed to their network online, you will see what an amazing character this Laurel Van Ness is. Think of the matches that she could have. Just think of these two nutheads between Laurel Van Ness and Nikki Cross.
Yep.
That is so, I would be so excited to see that. And by the way, Nikki Cross, after what I saw in NXT, get her on the main roster immediately. Also, I would love to see Laurel Van Ness against Ronda Rousey. Ronda Rousey, since being on Raw, there's definitely the intrigue just because of her name, but the stories have not been there. And
I think we're going to get that now with Nikki Bella. Her first real feud that she can dive into. Maybe to a certain extent she had that with Alexa Bliss, but this will be, you know, I think Nikki's going to be the one to carry the feud, majority of the talking.
Right. But that's fine, because she's the heel. She should be doing more of the talking. Yeah. But imagine having Laurel Van Ness, the hot mess, and Ronda Rousey in a storyline. I would pay money to see that, and I hope it happens. So for now, work, maybe eventually shoot. Let's move on to the main brand, WWE, and we talked about Crown Jewel earlier in the podcast. It may happen, it may not happen, but we do know the match that is slated as the main event, DX versus the Brothers of Destruction, will definitely happen somewhere, whether it's Crown Jewel or Survivor Series. Now, there are reports by WrestleVotes saying that this is a test for Shawn Michaels as to whether or not he can still do it in the ring. And if it's okay, if he does well, it will eventually set up a match at WrestleMania 35. Shoot or work, we'll see Shawn Michaels at WrestleMania 35.
So I'm going to say shoot on this. And the reason I'm going to say shoot is I don't think so Shawn Michaels coming back for this match, being that it's a tag team match, I can't see that being the last match he ever wrestles. You know, if he's coming back, whether it was for the money or for the love of it or missing it, I can't see this being the bookend. Okay, this is it. This is my last match. This is what people are going to remember me by, because he was very adamant that, his matches against The Undertaker, that's it. This is what I want people to remember me by. Out of respect for The Undertaker, I don't want to wrestle anymore. And we know that's, now he's coming back. He's joining with Triple H again. I don't think this is going to be his farewell match. He has to have one more match, one more meaningful match against somebody, I would think. So I'm going to say shoot.
I'm going to say shoot as well. I don't think this will be with The Undertaker, his last match. So there's definitely some dream matches. If you are the booker or the head of the promotion that is booking this match with Shawn Michaels, who do you slot him with at WrestleMania 35?
Oh, man.
Obviously, the one that gets talked about the most that they want to see is HBK and AJ. HBK and Daniel Bryan, I think. Yeah. Daniel, I don't think Johnny Gargano is up at the main roster at this point, so you're not going to see that. Seth Rollins and HBK would be a good match.
You could go through a whole, create an entire list of guys that you'd want to see him feud with. I'd pay to see any of them. All those matches you just mentioned. The ones that I'd be most nervous about would be the Daniel Bryan and AJ match, only because I don't want there to be this expectation that, oh my God, this is going to be the best match ever. And then now you're in a situation where now Shawn has come back and he wasn't able to deliver. So I don't know. We'll see what ends up happening, but any of those feuds could still be good.
Now, what if they do sort of like a turn story where Triple H turns on Shawn Michaels and sets up a match at WrestleMania 35.
I hope
and
not.
Triple H is the one that retires Shawn Michaels.
Yeah, and that's one of the things that I was considering. Would they actually do that? I don't think so. I want to see Shawn Michaels in a match with one of the younger guys where if they beat Shawn Michaels or go out there and perform, it will help get them to another level. Not that AJ Styles or Daniel Bryan aren't to, superstar level. But, if they do call up a guy like Johnny Gargano or Tommaso Ciampa or a younger guy from NXT, maybe Adam Cole, I don't know, anybody. Having them have a match against Shawn Michaels, if it delivers, and having them get that rub, you're automatically going to get something out of that. Being in the ring with Shawn Michaels at WrestleMania, people will talk about that. Triple H is at the tail end of his career. He's a part-time wrestler. He doesn't need it. Undertaker's going to be gone soon. He doesn't need it. The other guys, AJ, like I mentioned, AJ Styles, Daniel Bryan, they're already established stars. I'd rather see him in there with a younger guy who's going to get something out of it.
All right, I can see that, but I think it's either AJ or Daniel Bryan at this point. And if they go with Daniel Bryan versus The Miz, then it leaves AJ.
What about The Rock? The Rock has said he wants to come back, and that's the one feud that they've both talked about. It never happened, and that's something they've wanted. It's just a thought. I mean, I don't know.
I think if The Rock comes back and actually has a match at WrestleMania 35, it's going to be against Roman. Yeah. As much as this would, I think that would totally sell, and that would easily sell out the MetLife Stadium, even though it will sell out anyway. It's going to sell out regardless, but I think the pay-per-view buys and the network subscriptions will go through the roof if that ends up being a match. Would you make it the main event?
Shawn and Rock?
Yeah. Because there won't be a title on the line, and people always say one of the big knocks when there's not a title on the main event, oh, why isn't there a title in the main event? The title should be more important than any other match. Sometimes sometimes the match is just bigger than the title.
Yeah. You look at like a guy like The Undertaker, if you look at his streak, well, what would have been bigger and more important, having The Undertaker defend his streak at WrestleMania or the title? To me, the streak at WrestleMania is probably bigger than the title. It means more. Especially if you compare that, like a guy like Brock Lesnar, he's held all the titles, and now he's going after something new in the streak. So could that have main evented going back to WrestleMania? Absolutely. Somebody like Shawn Michaels, who is Mr. WrestleMania, he's held all those titles. Is the title any less meaningful? No, but should Shawn Michaels main event WrestleMania?
Well,
yeah, probably.
Let's go back to your point there with the streak. Let's talk about WrestleMania 30 for a second. Now, that was Daniel Bryan's culmination as the guy in WWE.
Right.
And also the same night Brock Lesnar conquered the streak. If you were to go back and you know the results of the show,
Yep.
would you have put Brock Lesnar in the main event?
No.
Against The Undertaker?
No, because granted, as I just said, the streak is probably bigger than the title matches at WrestleMania when it was still intact. Again, going back to the point I made about reading the room, you can't have Daniel Bryan's momentum at that point was, it was off the charts.
Right.
People were clamoring for him to get the belt, and that's not something you see too often. Those are legitimate movements. The yes movement, the crowd was so behind him. If you had Brock Lesnar defeat Undertaker and have that close the show, there's going to be a lot of people that go home upset. And they were lucky that people got back into the main event where Daniel Bryan actually ended up winning the title, because it could have fell flat, especially considering that it just kind of sucked the life out of the room when Undertaker lost. So should it have main evented, not given those specific circumstances, but any other WrestleMania where Undertaker was going to win, or people weren't into it, like the most recent ones with Roman. Yeah, it could have easily main evented ahead of those matches, I think.
Okay. Let's move on. Let's move on to overseas and our good friends, the Bullet Club, more specifically the Bullet Club Elite. And ever since the summer, the rumors have started that they're going to jump ship and head to WWE. And for the most part, people have said that it's not going to happen. But recently, I think things have really changed. And this could actually happen. You're talking about New Japan Pro Wrestling. They have a new regime there. All the management there is new and have no experience with wrestling. And that has caused a huge drop in morale in New Japan Pro Wrestling, not just with the Bullet Club Elite, with everybody there. Then there was a tweet by Cody, a little cryptic tweet saying now this could be the final time the Bullet Club are together. And it was deleted. You have the last two episodes of Being the Elite, where they are hinting and putting notes in there. I don't know if you saw this. 2 weeks ago, the episode was called TikTok.
Yeah.
And the Young Bucks are in a room, or I think it was Matt. Matt Jackson was in the room doing DDP yoga, and you hear the clock ticking. And he goes to his phone, and it's a countdown to the end of his contract. Then you have Hangman Page, who this was the first episode since All In. So he gets a brand new pair of boots, and in there is a note saying, if you want to be an assassin, you have to be more cerebral.
The ostrich boots.
Right. And signed by H. This past episode, you have Kenny Omega getting notes under his door at his hotel room. And it's saying, if you're looking for more, come to the Rumble as entry number 4. And if you're looking for a better payday, why not a match with AJ? Yeah. And then you have the news of Hangman Page turning down a WWE offer. So maybe he turns it down for now until he knows what everyone else is doing, because Cody has said they're going to do it as a group. Shoot or work, Bullet Club Elite will be in the WWE in 2019.
I'm going to say shoot, and I'm going to tell you why. We already mentioned the issues with New Japan as far as the morale and things of that nature, which certainly would affect anybody's decision. And that's number one. Number two is the fact that if you're going to try to compete with the WWE on a professional level and try to attract people from their fan base, the Bullet Club can't do that by themselves. They need people to feud with. And Okada is great. He's a big star in Japan. He's probably the biggest guy in comparison to when you take the Bullet Club out. Would you agree with that?
In New Japan?
Yeah, in New Japan.
Yes.
Yeah. Even in Ring of Honor, he'd be a bigger draw when you take out the Bullet Club than anybody else on either of the rosters.
Yes, I would agree with that.
Certain
either him or Naito.
Yeah. So the Bullet Club needs somebody to feud with, and whether it's Ring of Honor or whether it's New Japan, there just aren't established stars that people are going to connect with, where now, okay, these people will watch that product versus the WWE. And, there's a lot of good wrestlers, but it's just not going to happen. So if they're passionate about competing with the WWE, they're going to other stars are going to have to be established and created there, and I just don't see that happening.
Did you see this morning? Seth Rollins did a Q&A yesterday, and someone asked him,
he's the best in the world.
Right. Someone asked him who he wants to wrestle in a match with that's not in the WWE, and he mentioned Kenny Omega. And Kenny Omega tweeted this out on his personal Twitter, and he would love to have the match. Problem is, he's in New Japan and Seth is in WWE. You also have the relationship that the Elite already have with the New Day. And I think people are going to cringe when I say this, but I would love to see a 6-man tag between Omega and the Bucks and the New Day.
People shouldn't cringe. That'd be a great match.
It would, but if you say, "Oh, the Elite are coming," and you're thinking of all the matches, the New Day versus the Young Bucks and Kenny Omega is probably not the first that comes to mind.
Yeah.
But if you establish that, let's say they go straight to SmackDown, they don't go to NXT at all.
They shouldn't.
The Bucks, I think, should. The Bucks should. Omega shouldn't. But I'll go to that in a little bit. But say they go to SmackDown, and now you have the New Day versus Kenny Omega and the Young Bucks be the first feud for the Elite. Why not? People, you could start them. You can establish the Elite to the people that don't know who they are, because a lot of WWE fans still don't know who these guys are. A lot of the diehard wrestling fans obviously know who they are. There's, 1 million subscribers on Being the Elite. There's, New Japan Pro Wrestling is exceeding in popularity, and Ring of Honor and all that stuff. So people know who they are, just not the casual wrestling fan.
Yeah.
This would be a great way to get them, and the New Day could put them over, and it won't really affect them as much. I would love to see that be their first feud. Now, as far as the Bucks, like I said, they should start in NXT, and I'll tell you why. You look at the tag team division in WWE right now on both Raw and SmackDown. On Raw, the tag team champions are Dolph Ziggler and McIntyre, and they're mixed in the main event.
Yeah, they essentially just have the belts just to have them.
Right. There's no one else. The Revival, the Ascension, there's just, it's not formed yet.
Kane are just starting to come up.
It's not there yet. It's on its way to becoming at least a legitimate division again, but it's still in its infancy. You go to SmackDown, the Bludgeon Brothers, you got Eric Rowan's hurt. The Usos,
where have they been?
Where have they been? The Bar, they're part-time. They come and go. The New Day, they're the tag team champs. They're still the most popular tag team in the promotion. And then Sanity just disappeared. They really fell flat as soon as they came up. And that's it for the tag team division. In NXT, you have the Undisputed Era. You have Heavy Machinery. Mm-hmm. You have War Machine. You have the Street Profits. If they go there, have good matches with those guys, and they all come up together, think of the tag team division already. That would solely solidify the tag team division with the Young Bucks. They might actually want to have a little stability in their lives, seeing that they travel all over the world and barely have time to be with their kids and their wives. That if they stay in Orlando for, let's say, 6 months, they might enjoy that.
Mm-hmm. Let me say this. Whatever ends up happening, if they do go to the WWE, I hope that it's on some special terms where either they're allowed to still do their own thing outside of what WWE is going to produce, and I hope they're not kept on TV every single week. And let me explain why. So we've talked about this before. When you look at Brock Lesnar as the prime example, Brock Lesnar was kept off TV on a weekly basis. He was only presented in a limited basis. And that, while some people hated that, they also have to understand if you saw Brock Lesnar on a weekly basis, it just gets to a point where it's like, well, it's just Brock Lesnar. He's going to be there next week. Doesn't make for a special moment. It's just, compare it to like the Super Bowl. If you play the Super Bowl every week, it loses it. It loses its value. It delegitimizes it. If you bring in now Kenny Omega and the Bullet Club and the Young Bucks and you see them on a weekly basis, that'd be great, especially because people would want to see them. But if you put them in a more limited role, it's probably going to be even better because when they do show up, it will feel special. So I think they should still be allowed to do their Being the Elite show.
Would you put it on the network?
I don't know.
Because I think part of if they do end up at WWE, I think obviously being the elite will be talked about.
Of course.
And see if WWE will be allowed to put it on the network. Or, I mean, you have Matt Hardy has his YouTube channel. You have Zack Ryder has his YouTube channel. Xavier Woods has his YouTube channel. Do they say, you know what? Do what you want with being the elite. We don't care.
Yeah. The problem I see is, all right, you've got these guys who are edgy, and now you're going to bring them in, and don't water it down. You know, they swear, they make sexist jokes, they do all that type of stuff. And now you put it on the network, and what? Now they're not allowed to do that stuff. And now is it really truly the show that they want? No, it's a watered down version that WWE has control over, and it's not special anymore.
So why don't we do this? I'm going to name a wrestler of Bullet Club Elite, and you tell me where would you put them after they sign. You ready?
Okay.
Hangman Page.
NXT.
Marty Scurll.
NXT.
Cody.
Monday Night Raw. Feud against Roman.
Ooh. Would he go over Roman?
Would he go over Roman? He should, but we'll see. Or a feud against Triple H.
I could see that. I say that's his first feud, and at WrestleMania, kind of like the slap in the face gets his revenge for releasing him kind of thing. Kenny Omega.
AJ Styles SmackDown.
The Young Bucks.
Oh, man. I'd say SmackDown.
Who was their first feud against?
Oh, it would be whoever's champion at the time. I would say either the Bar or the New Day.
You would put them in the tag team titles from the get-go.
You have to. You have to do it. They'd have to be established as top guys as soon as they came in, the same way AJ Styles was.
All right. I agree with Hangman Page. I disagree with Marty Scurll. I say put him on 205 Live.
No. That's a waste.
No, it's not. 205 Live needs someone like Marty Scurll. And
it's not going to bring... NXT needs... 205 Live, I think it needs more than just him. There has to be something that's intriguing. Not that Marty Scurll's not, but I guarantee you a good majority of the fan base doesn't know who he is, so... He's not going to bring the ratings.
Well, I say maybe NXT to start, but put him up at 205 Live, and he will be a star there. Cody, I agree with that. Go to Raw and feud with Triple H. Maybe culminate at WrestleMania 35. Omega, SmackDown. But when they make the move to Fox, do you keep him on SmackDown?
I mean, we'll see. Wherever he goes, again, he's gonna be a draw wherever he goes, so it doesn't matter. AJ Styles, I think there was probably some concern. You know, you mentioned it. Will they know who these guys are? A lot of the fans probably didn't know who AJ Styles was, and that worked out just fine. So.
True. All right. And Young Bucks, I will also agree with SmackDown. And in that regard, I will say, don't go for the tag team titles at first. Have a feud with the Bar, and if the New Day have the tag team titles, start with the Bar. If not, start with the New Day and then go to the Bar. I don't think straight to the tag team titles.
And where it can get really fun is you bring those guys in, and Jericho starts to make appearances here and there, while still holding the IWGP Intercontinental Championship.
That's not happening.
It might. You know, the wrestling industry is changing. Triple H has mentioned it multiple times that he'd be willing to do certain things like that.
All right, let's see.
We'll see.
How about a former member of Bullet Club Elite and Adam Cole?
Of course.
Where does he go?
Where does he go? Well, I'd want to see the Undisputed Era come up and be established, and then feud with the Bullet Club. I mean, how could somebody not want to see that?
All right. But so, would you put Adam Cole with Raw or SmackDown?
Either or. He'll probably go to SmackDown.
SmackDown? All right.
Then you also have the OG Bullet Club members who are still there too. Finn Balor, Gallows Anderson, who we didn't even discuss yet. So there's a lot of interesting things that they'd be able to do with all those guys.
And do you now we split some people all over the place. Some are going to SmackDown, some are going to Raw, some are going to NXT. Do you have it where they are still a faction even though they're on separate brands? Or do you make them individuals because they're on separate brands?
No, I wouldn't make them individuals. I think the Bullet Club name, and I don't know who owns the copyright to any of that, or if they call them the Elite or whatever they end up calling them, that has a certain value to it where, they'd want to capitalize on that, I would think.
All right. Well, that was definitely a good discussion with the Bullet Club. Let's move over to someone else who might be jumping promotions. And I'm not talking about wrestling promotions. I'm talking about mixed martial arts to the WWE. So the Eagle, Khabib how do you say his name?
Khabib Nurmagomedov.
Yeah, that guy. Apparently, he tweeted out that WWE has contacted him to join the brand.
Yep.
Now, after all this that happened at UFC 229 with Conor McGregor and the aftermath of that, maybe this could just be smoke and mirrors as him trying to prevent his guys from getting fired after what happened. Or this could be that WWE has shown interest in him. Shoot or work, we will see Khabib the Eagle in WWE.
I'm going to say shoot. And the reason I'm going to say shoot is we've seen Vince McMahon's willingness to work with other UFC stars before. So Ronda Rousey, we know she's the women's champion right now. Brock Lesnar was allowed to go back and forth between the WWE and UFC before, while still under contract, which is unique. And Vince always talks about doing what's best for business. And when you look at the sheer numbers and the sales of UFC 229, absolutely shattered the previous record of 1.6 million pay-per-view buys. It came in at 2.4 million pay-per-view buys. So me as a fan, I didn't even expect it to. They were saying all along it's going to surpass 2 million views. I was saying there's no way. And the reason I said no way is because Khabib was not really into the promotion of the pay-per-view. And not only was he not into it, but McGregor wasn't. So essentially what they had to do was they had to sell this on the previous story of, their history, some promos that they created, and one press conference that they had. Outside of that, there was very little promotion for this fight. So I didn't expect it to do 2 million views, let alone 2.4. That being said, Khabib, we've all seen and heard about the melee after the fight, which may have been Khabib's smartest dumb decision he's ever made. Because now he's a guy who's not going to talk. He's all about fighting for honor and letting his fighting inside the ring, or inside the octagon do his talking. You have this now, so he's all over ESPN. He's just destroyed Conor McGregor, who's arguably one of the best fighters of all time. And he's just sold a ton of pay-per-views. Mm-hmm. So now Vince McMahon's looking at that, and you have a legitimate badass in Khabib, who's also the UFC champion. How could you not want to bring him on to a certain extent? And when you look at Ronda was they brought her on, but it was also after she had lost a couple of fights, and a lot of people pointed that out, saying, well, she's only there because she can't compete in the UFC. You got to strike while the iron's hot. He's right now is at the top of the game. He may be the biggest star, he could be one of the biggest draws in terms of mixed martial arts. So why not capitalize on that?
I say this is a work. I think this is just him trying to prevent his guys from getting fired in UFC. He wants to stay in UFC. I don't think he has any interest in WWE whatsoever. And a lot of people may see this as, oh, he's a mixed martial arts guy. He'll be huge at WWE. Let us not forget that he's 154 pounds.
Well, that's what he weighs in at.
He weighs in at 154 pounds. That's 2 pounds lighter than I am. Now, granted, he has a lot more muscle than I do, but you know what that screams? That screams 205 Live.
Well,
if he goes there, he'll go to 205 Live, and like I said, like how I said with Marty Scurll, they'll need someone like him. Maybe Khabib is the guy that brings eyes to 205 Live, but I don't see Khabib saying, hey, I'm going to be on 205 Live. I don't picture a 150-pound guy. Granted, he's a mixed martial artist, a freakish athlete, just beat Conor McGregor, one of the best fighters in the world. There's some legitimacy to it, but I can't picture him at 150 pounds beating a Roman Reigns at 265, a Brock Lesnar at 285, a Braun Strowman at 350 pounds, and make it seem compelling enough.
Sure. Well, He weighs in at 155. He probably walks around at like 180, so there's a weight cut. And he also used to wrestle, I think, in heavyweight. So he can gain the muscle mass and gain the weight back, I'm sure. But we'll see. Nobody's even saying he'd compete in a legitimate match. I mean, maybe an appearance at WrestleMania, some type of run-in. They did it with Floyd Mayweather.
Yeah, that's true.
Why not do it with him?
That's true.
I don't know who he'd go against, but
Big Show.
No.
He usually seems to be the scapegoat for that thing. But that's going to do it here for Shoot or Work. When we come back, it's Swerve Me Wrong, where we're going to talk about Vince and his loyalty to the Attitude Era guys. It's up next on the Squared Circle Psychobabble. Are you following the Squared Circle Psychobabble on social media? If not, you better get onto it. We're on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at SCPB Podcast. So we have about 10 minutes left on the Squared Circle Psychobabble. It's time now for Swerve Me Wrong, where I have 10 minutes to convince Ralph and the rest of the IWC that their popular opinion is wrong. The last couple of weeks we talked about the WWE product, that whether or not it's oversaturated, whether the ratings are dropping because of bad booking. And now there's a story out there that's saying that Vince has admitted that he does not trust the current roster and he needs guys like The Undertaker and Triple H and Shawn Michaels and The Rock to come back. He needs the Attitude Era guys to help with the ratings and keep the brand alive because the current roster doesn't do it. So we got 10 minutes on the clock, and that time starts now. So, Ralph, I'm going to list off here the main events of each pay-per-view from now until Super Showdown. So the Royal Rumble was the first ever women's Royal Rumble won by Asuka, okay? Not a part-timer, not a Attitude Era wrestler. Then you had a six-pack challenge, AJ Styles, Ziggler, Cena, Corbin, Owens, and Zayn. Then you had the Elimination Chamber won by Braun Strowman. WrestleMania, Brock Lesnar versus Roman Reigns. Backlash, Roman Reigns versus Samoa Joe. Money in the Bank, won by Braun Strowman. Extreme Rules, Seth Rollins versus Dolph Ziggler for the Intercontinental Championship. SummerSlam, Brock Lesnar versus Roman Reigns. Hell in a Cell, Roman Reigns versus Braun Strowman. So, how many of those are Attitude Era guys and part-timers?
Maybe one.
None.
Brock?
Brock's not really an Attitude Era guy. He's Ruthless Aggression, if anything. And so, the main event is supposed to be the one that sells the tickets, right? If you believe Al Snow and the real guys in wrestling, the main event is what sells the show. No Attitude Era guys there. They're pushing a guy named AJ Styles. And not only is he the cover guy of WWE 2K19, but he's also been the WWE champion, the top prize in the company, for about a year now. And the 5 WWE champions before him, AJ Styles, Jinder Mahal, Randy Orton, Bray Wyatt, and John Cena. Who was the first Universal Champion?
Was it Finn Balor?
That would be Finn Balor. Who was the second Universal Champion?
That was Kevin Owens.
Kevin Owens. So right there should tell you that Vince does trust his current roster. He gives them the opportunities to succeed. Sometimes they do. Sometimes they don't. Just because Super Showdown's main event was Undertaker versus Triple H and Crown Jewels will be DX versus the Brothers of Destruction should not make you believe that he needs the Attitude Era guys. Let us not forget, Australia, this is the first show that they had a big pay-per-view in 16 years. Crown Jewel, this is Saudi Arabia. There's a new market that they're trying to get into. And the person that is giving them all the money wants those particular guys there. So that's where the money is. Other than that, tell me where Vince needs the Attitude Era guys.
So Vince, as it's been well established and understood, Vince is a smart businessman. So he's going to go where the money is. And I think he can see the flaws in the show now. And we've talked a little bit about ratings, how the ratings have certainly gone down. Ticket sales, I think, are down to a certain extent as well. And there's just not as much as an investment from a fan point of view perspective in some of the newer guys. When you compare that to, as you mentioned last week, the fact that the Undertaker segment was the highest rated or the most viewed thing on YouTube, Vince sees that, I think, and he understands that, okay, if I can put these guys, even if to in a limited role, they still have the ability to draw. If you were to tell me, okay, well, Steve Austin's going to come out of retirement and he's going to have a match, would you have any... Would you believe that he would outdraw anybody currently on the WWE roster?
Because of the story behind it, no. But you're talking about someone that's coming out of retirement for the first time in 8 years.
So he'd draw more than somebody on the current roster, you think, or no?
Without a doubt. But you're talking about Shawn Michaels.
I'm talking about Steve Austin.
Steve Austin. I'm sorry, Steve Austin. If it's his first match since WrestleMania 19, so even further than 8 years, then yeah. Mm-hmm. But that's Stone Cold Steve Austin.
Okay. And if you were to sit there and somebody asked you, okay, do you think that do you think Shawn Michaels is still capable of delivering a great match? What would you say?
I've already told you that I have.
Okay. Now, with all of that being said, the fact that ratings are down and all of that other stuff that we've talked about previously, and you believe that ratings don't matter, I think they should.
No, I don't believe it. It's true. Ratings don't matter anymore.
Fair enough. Do you also believe that, we've talked about this before as well, the characters nowadays they're not as compelling and people can't get behind them as much as maybe some of the wrestlers from previous, more specifically the Attitude Era?
Right, but that's, again, the Attitude Era was the most lucrative time in any time in wrestling industry.
Yeah.
Where now you're talking about the WWE, who just had signed a $1 billion deal with Fox. That's not, and they're not getting The Rock. They're not getting Triple H. They're not getting The Undertaker. They're not getting Shawn Michaels. They're not getting Austin. They're getting, maybe, if they, do a draft, they're getting Roman Reigns. They're getting AJ Styles. They're getting Ronda Rousey. They're getting Seth Rollins. Mm-hmm. Vince trusts these guys enough to say, you know what? I'm going to try and get a $1 billion deal out of Fox.
Right.
And he got it.
Well, he trusts them because he has no one else. That's who's on his roster. You can't do anything about that. He can't just magically wave a wand and create a character.
No, I understand that. But if it was where he doesn't trust his guys, he would be not putting them in prime time spots. He would not be putting them in main events and try to find every single way to get these Attitude Era guys back at every pay-per-view to try to increase subscriptions.
Well, to a certain extent, he kind of is. I mean, he's bringing back Shawn Michaels. We've heard the rumors about The Rock coming back.
But that's, take Crown Jewel out of this.
He's still coming back.
He's coming back, but because of the money that the Prince of Saudi Arabia has given WWE. It has nothing to do with, I don't trust that Roman Reigns and Seth Rollins can sell. I need Shawn Michaels to come back. It's just because this Prince of Saudi Arabia still thinks it's 1997 and wants Yokozuna and the Ultimate Warrior there.
Well, okay. Well, how about Jericho? If Vince were to sign back Jericho, would you deny that he'd be one of the biggest stars right now in the WWE?
Yes, but there's a difference between Jericho and the other guys. Jericho has been continually active in WWE and in wrestling pretty much since 1993. It's not where he went on to do a movie and became the biggest selling actor of all time. It's not like he went on and became a podcast host.
Right.
And
he does have a podcast.
He does have a podcast, but it's not like he's doing the Broken Skull Ranch. It's not like The Undertaker, who only does it at WrestleMania, or Shawn Michaels, who said, you know what, I'm retired, I'm not doing it anymore. Jericho's been active. So it's a little different because Jericho comes in when he wants, and could he become a main event guy? I mean, the way he's, always changing his character and the way he is now, probably. But he's been back in times where people say they trust too much on the part-time guys. He's come back and it hasn't main evented. He doesn't need to.
He doesn't need to, but, the main point of it, of this discussion is this, Vince, to a certain extent, needs these guys because at a certain level, he might not trust the guys that are currently on the roster. So you take a guy like Jericho, somebody he can rely on, or you take a guy like Triple H, somebody that he relies on. Shawn Michaels, those guys, he's bringing them back One, because it's evident that people still want to see them. There's still Undertaker's still going to be a draw. You put him in WrestleMania.
I get that.
At this point in his career, people are still going to pay tickets to see him. Whether it's they're paying for the tickets, they're paying for the merchandise, and Vince understands that. I think So yes, the guys that are currently on the roster now, they're a draw, and people want to see them, but not. I still think that the guys from the Attitude Era have some certain value, and I think Vince understands that, and he wants to capitalize on it.
All right, I can agree to that argument, but there's got to be a point where people have to realize that nostalgia can only get you so far. How many times have we seen reboots and remakes and relaunches of shows or movies that have just failed because they're just not as good as the original or what we remember them by? Sometimes it's just better to leave it as is. I think that's why Austin has never come back. It's just better to remember him for what he was between 1997 and 2002. Yep. It's better that we don't see. I mean, it would have been better to see The Undertaker retire after WrestleMania 33 than what we've seen since. The guy can't move. Pretty much it's going to be done with The Undertaker. Triple H, there's still something left in the tank, and because he's, in the company and he's Vince's son-in-law, that's a little different. But then Shawn Michaels, I think as much as people want him to come back, maybe it might be better off to leave him where it was because we can remember him back in 2010 where he left off. But again, I have said that he could still have a good match, so only time will tell. I will leave us with this question. 5-10 years down the road, when those careers are done of Roman Reigns and Seth Rollins and Kevin Owens and their time is done and Vince wants to put him in more of a part-time role, do they get the same nostalgia as The Undertaker and Triple H and Cena and all them before them?
I think some of them can and some of them will. Like AJ Styles, he's a big star. I think certainly if he's kept away for a while and it comes back, well, that's a big deal. Kevin Owens, maybe. It depends.
But would they steal the spotlight from the young guys, the current roster, like people say that Vince does with the current Attitude Era guys?
I don't view it that way. I mean, I think that he's bringing these guys back because, like I said, he knows they're a draw. Some of the guys now, I'm sorry, you're just not as big a draw as this guy. So it's all about business.
Right.
They can complain all they want about not being in the main event and not be given certain opportunities. You're on TV on a weekly basis. These guys are not. And if they can come back and still outperform you or outdraw you, then there's something wrong there, and you have to look at yourself in the mirror, as The Miz said.
So, is there any belief that Vince doesn't trust the current roster in your mind?
Do I think it's true that he doesn't trust the roster?
Mm-hmm.
I think to a certain extent, yeah, and because you hear these little rumors pop up now and then, and is there any truth to it? I don't know. But you've heard it with Kevin Owens, where he was a guy that they had a lot of trust in, and then, he didn't necessarily live up to expectations, and there's been, these rumors about, well, Vince is upset about his weight, so I don't know how true any of that stuff is. So there's that. The fact that Roman Reigns was booed at, what pay-per-view was that? And I forget if it was Royal Rumble, but afterwards there was the rumors going around that Vince said it was eye-opening. So as much as people complain that Vince doesn't listen to the crowd, he still listens to a certain extent. He could see that Roman's getting booed on a consistent basis. He could tell when somebody's not getting a reaction like Lashley. So, yeah, I mean, yeah, there's probably some truth to that.
I don't think there is, but well, maybe Vince will start pushing some guys and help me further my case. But that's going to do it here for the Squared Circle Psychobabble. Make sure you subscribe on whether it's iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play, wherever you're listening to the podcast. If you're watching on YouTube, make sure you hit subscribe, hit the bell for notifications, and give us a review, because the more reviews we get, the higher we get on the charts, and the more Squared Circle Psychobabble you will get here. For Ralph Valenti, my name is Michael Valenti saying so long from the Squared Circle Psychobabble.